name is David Bummer. I'm here with my brother Navigator.
Yes, sir.
AKA the bass music historian, as I've titled him most definitely.
My new title.
Bass music historian. And we are here representing Thames Delta Radio with a webinar around bass music culture.
We're going to speak about the origins of the MCs, as in terms of what MCs do today and where that came from. So every time I take this class and I ask, you know, my audience, where do they think MCing started from? The first thing they say is hip hop. And I understand why they say that. And a lot of people say, you know, reggae music, and I understand why they say that. But there's definitely earlier stages of development before hip hop and reggae. And I think the first thing, we're going to show you some footage of it, is the West African griots. This is from West Africa. You know, we don't even know the time periods of when this started. You know, it could have been from the 18th, even the 17th century. But we're talking about way before the 20th century. So this was where the whole concept and the feeling of what an MC does comes from. What we do nowadays as MC, where it all comes from. And then after that, I would say the second thing would be the scat and bebop era, which is like the early 1920s. And I think we're going to have some footage to show you of a gentleman called Cab Calloway. These guys were cabaret entertainers who could sing, dance, entertain, and they were also rapping. When you check out the Cab Calloway clip, you'll see what I mean.
Hey folks, here's a story about Minnie the Moocher. She was a low-down, hoochie coocher. She was the roughest, toughest frail. Minnie had a heart as big as a whale. Heidi, 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 ho! Heidi, 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 ho! Yeti, 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 yeti! Yeti, 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 yeti! Whoa! Heidi, 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 ho! Heidi, 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 ho!
Mother sent a man, and then he decided to destroy the land. He spoke to Noah, Noah stopped. He said, Noah, I want you to build me an ark. I want you to build it 3 cubits long. I want you to build it big and strong. I want it 50 high and 50 wide, so it will stand the wind and tide.
And then after that, I would say the other most influential person that I look towards as a big inspiration is James Brown.
I feel good. I knew that I would now. So good. I got it. I feel nice.
But in terms of what James Brown did, he was, for me, one of the first guys to display what a host would do MCing over whatever genre of music now. Because James Brown always gave space for the instrumentation. And he wasn't necessarily a ballad singer. He wasn't like a crooner singing, I love you, la 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 la. It wasn't that. It was more like, wow, I feel good. You see, the principle of MCing there was he gave the break where the comes in. That is instrumentation where he doesn't need a vocal over it. But then when the little part comes where it's come back to the bass line and just the beat again, he comes back in and puts another little bit of his vocal in there. And that's what MCing is basically about, especially if you think about it in terms of, say, jungle and drum and bass, or in terms of UK garage. So the first sort of reggae MCs to start hosting from the 60s would be, there were 3 guys. And the 3 guys were King Stitch, Count Machuki, and Daddy U-Roy.
It's the honor today from your boss DJ, I
King Stitch. House it from the top to the very last drop. Fire corner. Reggae wise.
You're coming from town, your face turn to this sound. On your way up or on your way down, I want you to step at this station for identification. I'm gonna turn you over to your sound dimension, your music producer. Everybody on the ball!
King Stitch and Count Machuki both came from sound systems. Now, these sound systems back in the 60s weren't full-on sound systems like an RC1 or a Void or anything like that. They were literally a small little sound system, sometimes even in the back of a car. One speaker and a little one deck, and they'd play records and have this music coming out of this speaker, and they'd have a microphone there. So they'd actually be playing the music and MCing on the music. And when I say MCing, I'm just talking about hosting and sort of saying, you know, this song's called that. Like, you know, now here come the man them call, I don't know, Dennis Brown selection, and then they're playing the tune, and then after a while, they decide they're going to turn it over onto the version side, and then they might do some little, wow, chicka bow, wow, wow. That was like the original style of MCing, and even though it might not seem relevant to you guys, especially nowadays, these youngers that are doing, you know,
Double time and
double time stuff, and, you know, drill, grime and stuff like that, you know, a young person like that listening to that type of thing would be like, that's got nothing to do with what I do. But it's literally the first guys that started to doing this, literally what everything came from, like in terms of what we do now. So that was King Stitch and Count Machuki. There were two main guys that had sound systems back in that day, which was, I would say, Sir Coxsone Dodd, and he had a sound called Downbeat International. And there was another guy called Duke Reid, who had a sound system, sort of a setup called Duke Reid. And these guys both ended up making record labels, and they went on to be very, very legendary people in the music industry and reggae. But out of this era, and those first two guys, King Stitch and Count Machuki, came another guy who's very, very important and very, very influential, and his name is Daddy U-Roy. We're going to show you a clip.
Now let the world know how much I need to know. Still I want the world to know. Gee, we are never let it go, you know. Go to be good, be good. You are loving us now, but you may change, but I will never.
Now, Daddy U-Roy was the first one to have commercial success. So we call Daddy U-Roy, in terms of reggae, we call Daddy U-Roy the godfather of all MCs, of all DJs, because in Jamaica, we didn't call the guy on the mic the MC. We call him the DJ, because back in those days, he'd play the music and be on the microphone at the same time.
See that you never know. Say you keep on coming back to the door. 'Cause I want to see you big no more. You are big, you baby. Chill about it. Call me in the music God version, God love. If I play you some more on the track for sure.
Daddy U-Roy is the person that I would say is the most relevant person, the person that did it on an international and commercial level back in the 60s and made other people look at it and think, hey, this is something that we can actually make money out of, we can get popular, we can sell records out of, and he set that precedent. So yeah, crazy. I mean, these guys are people that I've looked up to, and I used to listen to their music when I was a child. And there was another person that was listening to them very intently and closely in Jamaica back in the late 60s, I would say. And there was a gentleman called...
You're going to talk about a man called Kool Herc.
Kool Herc.
Most definitely.
Kool Herc.
Kool Herc.
Well said, David. So Kool Herc left Jamaica in 1967 and went to New York.
That's right.
And when he was there, he decided to mix up the reggae music with what we would call, which was back in that day called the breakbeat kind of era, which is all the stuff that, you know, Clive Stubblefield was playing and what James Brown was playing. It was funk and breakbeat music, you know, breaks, yeah? And also a lot of Latino music. So you've got the Latino influence, you've got the American break and funk and all of that type of stuff. Amens, you're talking about the amen break. I can remember as a child watching the TV and the news came on, and there was this news presenter saying, yes, the latest fad from America is called hip hop. And there was these guys doing all this furious breaking and spinning on their heads and everything, and guys up there rapping and the rapper's delight, you know, in 1979. You know, I said a hip, a hop, a hippie dippy dippy the hip hop, and you don't stop, a rockin' to the bang bang boogie, say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogity beat. And I was like, wow. Check out some of the clips that we're gonna show you about Kool Herc and some of these guys that were way back then in the 70s that brought that original vibe from Jamaica to America.
Yo, let's do it. Get down, stop that messing around. Everybody knows I'm going down. Your ladies, rock hard. I know an AC bell that Jones did far. I'm a crystal with potential of a superstar. The perfect for style and the clothes you wear. The match with the color of the cheeks of your hair. Hold a nice position in the way you walk. Sweet sense of tone in the way you walk. Walk through the block and fellas look at you and try to make a pass. If they don't simple.
Crazy, right? It's crazy to think about that. Man. Wow. So yeah, so now we're coming into the era in the UK just before my era of MCs. There were, you know, in the 60s and the 50s and the 60s, I would say, you know, we had the Windrush generation, which is my father's generation, coming over here from Jamaica. And in the 60s and late 60s going into the 70s, there was a lot of the children from that Windrush generation that came over when they were young to the UK and were totally besotted and embodied in the whole sound system culture thing from Jamaica and started to build their own sound systems here in the UK. And MCs that I would say influenced me in the UK, coming from Tottenham, would have been Raymond Naphtali and another guy called Roy Rankin. We'll show you some clips from them as well.
Now go next to them now, my hygiene. What I know?
Easy no man.
Now people just hold on tight. It's like Prince Naphtali on the microphone tonight. When me come to show you say that you are bright. When me come to show you say that you are bright. Hey, any rhythm me ride, any rhythm, any rhythm me ride, any rhythm, any rhythm me ride, any rhythm. What? Any rhythm me ride, any rhythm, any rhythm me ride, any rhythm. Well, I know one type of rhythm I specialize in. Light up for them the DJ when me hear speaking. So now, sing I sing no matter with no taxi. Give me a two of and even Tchaikovsky. Me will mash up them the rhythm with the ability. Me a send out request now to one the posse. Can you say any rhythm me ride, any rhythm, any rhythm me ride, any rhythm.
And another big artist or MC from them times from South London, Brixton, was a guy called Just Screechy. These are people that I used to go to parties literally as a 12, 13-year-old, 14-year-old and stand up there in the dance and just study these guys. Watch the swag. Watch how they used to pronounce their words. Listen to the frequency of their voices. Watch how they would hold the microphone. Listen to the frequency of their voice coming through the speaker box. Lyrical styles, melodies, all of this stuff for me was just intriguing, and it made me wanna take up the mic and do it myself as well. So Raymond Naphtali, Roy Rankin, Just Screechy, there was quite a few others. We won't go into the whole thing, but I'm sure we can find a couple of clips to show you.
Walk and stop. You go out on the street to be walk and stop. You come in and the dance to be walk and stop. One hand in your pocket and one by your side. You walk with a limp and you walk with a stride. Say mind you don't slip up, say mind you don't slide. Cause if you do that, you will rock your backside.
I remember him chatting that in dances on cutting cocks and back in, you know, in the late 70s, early, literally standing up there, and then that became a record and blew him up. Blew him up, and then SL2 came along and sampled it and made the other tune, and he blew up. You know, it's just crazy how it all goes.
Who would you say was like really influential in the 80s then? What kind of artists would you say
Right, well, you know, this is my era now, you know. This is something that I can talk about extensively.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into like the full thing, but
Yeah.
in the 80s, rub-a-dub dancehall was the preferred choice of music. Then when it got to like the mid-80s, that's when the digital dancehall music came in. People like Smiley Culture, Tipper Irie, Philip Levi, obviously Demon Rockers and Flinty Badman, who you now know as Ragga Twins, myself, Specky Navigator, Tenorfly, Daddy Freddy, oh my gosh, you know, Sweetie Irie, they came a little bit later.
They came a little bit later, General Levy,
Sweetie
a little bit
Irie
later,
towards the end of the 80s.
Yeah.
But that era of people, like I would say, even though I was growing up with them and we were all the same age, Smiley Culture was definitely an innovative person who had a very business-minded, you know, approach to the music industry at that time.
Got me superstar, through me drive a Fiat and a Mercel where me launch ya. Some more time I'm going to East and down fi check some company. Them a tell produce insurance license and MOT, but me say police officer no give me producer. Police officer no bother give me producer. Police officer no give me producer. Police officer no bother give me producer.
And you're talking about the mid-80s here. There was a lot of racism. There was a lot of blockages for the black culture and the black music in general. You couldn't get a venue. You wouldn't, you know, and all of a sudden I'm seeing Smiley Culture on TV.
Give me producer, cause me Smiley Culture used to drive up a Lance, yeah. And me a drive car from me a teenage.
And we can't forget a guy called Peter King. He is the guy that originated that fast style that Smiley Culture and Asher Senator became popular for. And they've never ever sort of denied that. It's just, you know, it's about being in the right place at the right time. Sometimes you might have started something, but you just never had the charisma, or you weren't in the right place at the right time, or you didn't have the energy to step forward and take it, and another guy did. But Peter King, big up yourself, because we know that you was the originator of the fast style.
Some of them a talk about them and the fast style originator.
Them too lie.
Cause King him a the inventor.
And some of them a talk but them bring continuous lyrics about ya.
Them too lie.
Cause the first ones was Smiley and Dasher.
So listen we know.
And Eric Papa.
For the micro center.
Can't take the fibber.
Can't take no lie.
UK 80 sound system MCs literally are the basis for everything that's happened since 1980 coming right through to 2022, like where we are now. UK sound system MCs from the 1980s.
Tell them about the Slimmies. What Slimmies? The ones in Electric and I see them. Yeah. Cause when I see them, I did a rap. What? You mean you didn't store? You know that. I did that, but we're about to die. True, I'm problem.
Right, so Rodney P, London Posse, you know, this was a mega group, really, and they were the first guys to really make an impact. Alongside Demon Boys, there was another group called Hijack. I don't know if you know about a guy called Unknown MC, who's quite big in the garage scene back in the day.
Boy, you know the score. Rhyme so good I deserve an encore. All about the style we bring. We make you laugh like when you was a little child again.
He was from Hijack. You know, that was another group. You know, they'd come out on stage with a coffin and like all these balaclavas on and like, you know, crazy. But their live show was amazing. Do you know what I mean? So you've got Rodney P, Bionic, like Black Twang, obviously Rebel MC, who we all know now as Congo Natty. He was another one of those guys.
Code, tell me something. You can play bass. You can play drum.
They literally were the bridging between reggae sound systems and dance music MC culture.
The MC has started. Pump up the house and groove it. Stop. You're in a shakedown zone. You like bass? I love it to the bone.
They also spoke in their own UK accents.
Everybody shake your stuff.
You know, Skinny Man was another.
Holistic affairs, nobody cares, magic's going on everywhere. People have got less stuff to share. Next generations must prepare, and I'm well sincere when I do declare that we're getting more heartless year to year. Who says big men don't shed a tear? They'll all be living under fear.
UK hip-hop MCs, for me, are the most underappreciated genre or era of MCs in the UK.
The bomber awaits, rises, creates an evil structure, a terror conductor, a lethal weapon, constructed by cretins. Crazy minded man, maniac was Satan. Due to a kill blood must be spilled, millions dying, crescendo crying, no one spying. The plans are locked away, returns to base. Oh no, no way. Violence loving it, the thought of dropping it, mass destruction.
It had a little bit of ragga mixed up in it because most of them have got West Indian parents, whether it's from Jamaica or another West Indian island. So you've got a little bit of patois in there, but it's mixed up with the Cockney from the London, slangs and all of that, and they mix that all up together.
K, lash your ass, Clark, neck off. I split you in half like a gun blast from Lennox. Hotter than flammable rocks. From the manor where man are animal, yamming you like fox. Expert slush, specialise in handling with man's hatching and planning plots, looking to jam in your spot.
The pioneers of the British hip-hop scene.
I want to hear a little bit about the dance era now.
Saturday night in South London, hundreds of young people are gathering for the latest craze, an acid house party in a disused warehouse. Coaches will take them to a destination which has deliberately been kept secret to evade the police.
Where do you think you're going to?
We don't know, it's quite like mystery.
That's the mystery about it. This is acid, man. This is acid, man.
Time to get funky to this cut, so scream and throw your hands up. The party's about to begin. The bass and boy is banging.
Dance music era for MCs. Those guys before, the UK hip-hop MCs, they literally paved the way for what was going on now because we took that breakbeat influence from the UK hip-hop music and sped it up, and it became acid house. There wasn't a lot of the lyrical side of it, wasn't really there at first, but there were a few guys out there like Mad P. There was a few guys out there that were lyrical, I ain't gonna say that, but it wasn't really what we would be, how it was.
It was more about, it was like more about rhyming.
A lot of people were kind of like very high on whatever substances they were taking and drink, and they weren't really MCs, they were mates of mates jumping up on the stage. But what it did was it led from acid house into hardcore and then into jungle. Now when it got into the hardcore period, just coming towards the end of acid house, I was around Ragga Twins, we were very good friends. They got signed to a label called Shut Up and Dance, and if you go back, we'll show you some footage definitely of some of the tracks from them times there.
Ragga Twins them out, let me hear ya. Ragga Twins them out. So wake up on top. Oh, the Ragga Twins so wake up on top. So wake up on top. Oh, the Ragga Twins so wake up on top. Cause I'm gonna finish up when they get the car manage it. And I finish up when they get the car take it. And I finish up when they get the car manage it. And I finish up when they get the car. So the business don't be killing you. Let me a one all the nice young people them. Come watching them. Dr. Ian, make a one of them. And your best friend, you don't want to see the people that you assist. I'm on the program, something left lyrics. You want all of you break the mind up quick. And don't take a more anything tablet.
We went from acid house into the hardcore era.
Hey, Lord, hey. Follow me. Bimbo. Mama, me turn my door. Mama, me turn my door. Hey, mama, me turn my door. Mama, me turn my door.
And after this hardcore music came in, you started to feel this reggae influence coming into the music.
No, this is the original. Ragamuffin song. Oh no, that's how we sound. Give me the beat, just bad boy.
Shaking the cut, the rock up.
Bad boy.
Shaking the cut, the rock up. Shaking the cut, the rock up.
Bad boy.
Shaking the cut, the rock up.
Here I come, should whoa, sing over. You know when we come it's just reality.
I mean, so I was in these dances, hearing all of this 80s music now being regurgitated, remixed and reworked into this hardcore jungle music that was evolving, and it just brought me right back to when I was a teenager, man. I'm jumping around in these dances as a 30-odd-year-old thinking like, wow, this is amazing.
We're brother than Broadway. Yes, we're broad. We're broad. We're brother than Broadway. Here I come with a plus to the negative one. First step, realize where you come from. So get ready, can your time soon come. Walk down one as a cush Babylon.
And yeah, I suppose that was the original. The first MC I heard in a roast party, which was Sunday roast, they played like strictly jungle, was MC Moose. There were people like GQ, Bassman from the Midlands. You had the first sort of like proper fast style MC that used to kill it. Rest in peace,
Stevie Hyper D. Shabba D was big them times there as well. Yeah. Fearless.
Yo, mad the whole of them, I spin them like a windmill. You talk for them, don't tell them how we got the skill. Dance can nice and let's win the on the bill. And the girls see you with vices like them teams can't fulfill.
Now what jungle did was it gave the UK its own identity. I've been in many parties, I've been to many events, I've seen people on the street, I've gone to a 40th birthday party or a 30th birthday party, and you're in there with all these people, and people just come up to me at the bar and be like, Navi, man, Navi, you've got no clue what you did. Well, it wasn't me by myself that did that. There was a whole load of us junglists and drum and bass people that put jungle and drum and bass on the map. But one thing it did do was it gave us our own individual identity in the UK. Jungle music did that, and that was the springboard for all of the other genres.
Time to make the place explode. The sound of the music my social hyperbeat. Time for the reach out in the sanctuary. Let's feel a massive. Time for the whistles and the horns. You know the cool.
Also, rest in peace, Skibbity, because Skibbity, you know, Skibber was one of those guys that came along a little bit later than everybody else, maybe around the mid-90s. I mean, he was doing his thing from earlier, but like, you know, when he actually started getting going and becoming the Skibbity that we knew before he passed, it was around the mid-90s, I was about 95, 96, and he literally took all of them influences and all of this stuff and making, you know, lyrics about Street Fighter and cars and football teams and what have you.
Alright, okay then. I'm gonna get it when I'm in spray. They mad. So not enough lyrics to make me, so the way back to the faders. On the day-to-day basis, spare man, I'm trying to trade faces with me. But it ain't gonna make no big P. They ain't doing it right. Deeper, darker, deeper, danger, mini ranger, paper, big beta. Skip it if I can be doing the man, love it, look at that. I got the yo.
And it's gone from, you know, original jungle music to drum and bass and into what we call jump up now. And so then you have to speak about people like, I don't know, X-Man and Harry Shotter.
Yo, explode like a bomb man, let off the fresh code. That flow, my dress codes. Jet black, I'm going to war. The back tens, even the red patch on the best top. Press that, trigger this, figure your head back. Head back to base where I rest that. Step out of my buzz on off him. It's murder. Me and my team, we take the team for my Excel, the expansion. Look at my Excel sheet for the tax here. I'm not ramping. X-raying, not complicated, I'm concentrating on ranking. How you lyrically, but without the award, I'm still the champ.
And the next genre to kick off after that was UKG, which is UK Garage. And a lot of those MCs actually wanted to be jungle MCs, but the scene was so saturated and locked, they couldn't get in. And the original Garage MC, I can remember from back in the roast days when we sort of elevated the whole brand and started to play Astoria. There would always be a garage room in the second arena, and the Don MC, them times there was MC Creed.
To make your mind blow. Creed on the mic, how you like. The bigger they come, the harder they fall. But
G Jews off your down the wall. But it's alright, we didn't come to fight. Cause the beat and the rhythm is here to you and I. So don't be lazy, take your place on the ladder. Move it to the treble and the bass with a batter.
And the MCing style was more on a hip-hoppy tip as opposed to jungle, which was more on a ragga tip and on a double time kind of thing. So at that stage of the game, we had people like Creed, DT.
Do you really like it? Do you really like it? We're loving it, loving it, loving it. We're loving it like it.
Luck and Neat,
Yeah.
CKP, my general. I love CK, man. That's my don out of all of the MCs, them. I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody. If I haven't mentioned your name, please. You know what I mean? Viper, Blakey, R.I.P. Charlie Brown. There's so many of you guys out there. You know, even Evil B. You know, he was a bad man on the garage as well. Be Live, you know, big up yourself, Be Live. And then it got into the crews. Heartless Crew, Pay As You Go. And ultimately, we ended up with a crew called So Solid. Something that started off as an underground thing in clubs and in warehouses and stuff like that, actually getting to the point where you're getting signed by a major record label. And before these guys, there was the Jungle MCs, and they did exactly the same thing. They were getting signed by major record labels. General Levy, for instance, made Incredible, one of the biggest jungle hits that went national. You know, UK Apache with Original Nutter that went national. So now we've come out of the jungle era and we've gone into the UK garage era, and all of these MCs, whether or not they were in the dance or whether they'd made records, they all took this UK MC culture to a whole nother level.
Some of them are slipping up, some of them are grudge me up. So funny vampire, see me on the telly.
You know, the 80s was, I would say, largely sound system. The 90s was when we got into dance music and we had acid house, we had hardcore and we had jungle. The end of the 90s, we're going into the UK garage era, and now we're talking about 2000. The year 2000 is when I sort of became aware of grime music and the origins of what that genre was about.
I'm a deep one, deep son, king from a deep slum. So cold after me, the heat's done. Yeah, and your flow's a cheap one. My flow's money, your fam say my words like drink, dance, bubble, cool, that a discreet one. Got so many bangers in my map when I flick through, fam, I'm dying to leak one. So many bangers, I'm dying to leak one.
And it was also the same time, around the same time, when YouTube started getting popular. People were just uploading videos on there, and everybody started to get these smartphones. You know, the little kids, they were on laptops, they were on notebooks and iPads, and you know, it was crazy. I didn't even flipping got a proper smartphone yet. Didn't even have don't think I even had an email address at that stage. But grime blew up like crazy.
Never looked up, place hot with sun, never lose none. Expect what's that, never been one. 3 plus 2 plus 3 plus 1. Me and me are gonna make up where from. Ain't no comedy, ain't no fun. He came, he test, he got stung. And I'm making them see feel glum. 3 times 10 plus 7 plus 1. Till I'm going bring it on till I'm where come. 10 plus 8 plus 1. You don't want a little bit, you don't want none.
Grime music was also another genre of music that evolved because a lot of these grime MCs wanted to be either jungle or UK garage MCs, but there was no space. I want to bring it right up to date now. It's been amazing speaking about this, actually. When I speak about this and I think about it, you know, I've been an MC now, or a vocalist, or whatever you want to call me. I've been doing this for 43 years this year. And over those 4 decades, I've seen so much that it prompted me to go and look back into it and find out exactly where some of this original energy came from to take us to where we are now. And I'm one of those guys that's always been looking for the new angle. I don't get stuck or static into what I'm doing. I've always wanted to do something new. I like working with the youths them. I like working with people that I've never worked with before. I like working with the elders before me even, because they're always going to show you something that you don't know, that you haven't learned before. And that's imperative in my whole forward movement, and my capacity as an MC is to be learning all the time. So now, and I know there's a lot of elders out there and people out here that don't really identify with what the youngers are doing now, but there's no doubt that trap and drill have had a huge influence on what's going on in the UK in terms of what MCing is. And we've also got like, what do they call it? They call it trap hall as well. The Jamaican dancehall thing has also evolved into something else. So the youngers are more into this trap and drill kind of beats, and people are collaborating from, you know, America to Jamaica back to the UK. So, you know, I would say that the hottest genre of music right now in the UK in terms of what MCs do is a genre called drill.
Look. Fresh home still using a kettle to whip this fish, ain't nothing like tuna. Would've been more than meddling kids if Kruger taught me to whip up sooner. I don't trap with melanin kids, the rumour is Diggy D is a groomer. Just mixed 252 with 60, the boy Ash just rang for a tuna. And that's actually factual. Pirates full with oil, in jail mixed that with mackerel. It felt amusing for you when Big Man Joe man broke my capsules. Should've been out school, he left that place when cats could. Why? We all sell drugs, it's natural.
That's nicely up to date. And there you have it. You know, that's the full spectrum of what I would call the origins of the MC in terms of where it came from, originated from. Before it was actually spoken over a musical beat, which is over drums, you know, that type of vibe, to what we're doing now with drill, you know. So that's it from Navi, the bass music historian.
Because it reminds me of when Jungle first started in London, right? And it's just the exuberance of the crowd, the vibes. You can just feel the feedback, you know? And that's the best thing about being up there on the stage and actually trying to, you know, bring that vibe out of the crowd.
We are control, we are warrior. We not sell with soul, we are warrior. Jarasta patrol for the warrior. Nah dropping on no hole, we are warrior. But it's a perilous time, we are warrior. Rebellious time, we are warrior. A very treacherous time for the warrior. So this a exodus time for the warrior.
Pick up me skill, pick up me spear. Let's make this very clear. A warrior, I am a warrior, no one no fear. Invisible weapons, your guns and nuclear bombs. That really not go work because my confidence is strong. I who them think them is, I who them think I am. I know it's getting dreadful in the heart of Babylon. Me now pick up no knife, me now pick up no gun. A word, sound and power in a disagreement.
Simple warriors rise, ruminate the facts, open up your eyes. Say they want to protect you, something ain't right. Acting like a shepherd, that's a disguise. Warriors assemble, warriors rise, ruminate the facts, open up your eyes. Say they want to protect you, something ain't right. Acting like a shepherd, that's a disguise.
Trouble say warrior, not warrior. Broke down the barrier. Ready for the battle like a aircraft carrier. Warrior, no scavenger. Rider, no amateur. And we no take order from no chief or manager. Freedom fighter, we are fight, we rise up. Keep a